FD.
Hello there, very good evening. This is the weekend edition of Primetime News on TV1 for the News First, where the people come first. I'm Martin Satyanesan. Let's start off with a look at your headlines for this evening.
Suspects behind Dinesh Shafter's murder still at large. What is the motive for the murder? News First files special report. Special operation in the Western Province. 75 suspects who sold narcotic substances to school students arrested. China agrees to a formation of Global Sovereign Debt Roundtable. Sri Lanka must act in a friendly manner, says President. Grade 5 scholarship exams tomorrow. A request by the Commissioner General of Examinations. Price of bread reduced from midnight.
On to your top story this evening. Sri Lanka Police and the Criminal Investigations Department recorded statements from 23 people regarding the murder of respected Colombo-based businessman Dinesh Shafter. A homicide investigation is currently underway involving the CID, Colombo Crimes Division and 2 other police teams.
It was an incident that sent shockwaves across Colombo when businessman Dinesh Shafter was found tied up and strangled inside his car at the public cemetery in Boralla on Thursday evening. He was admitted to the intensive care unit of the Colombo National Hospital, where he succumbed to his injuries. What was the motive for the murder? Was this a premeditated murder? Or was this an attempt to intimidate the businessman that went horribly wrong? Reasons for suspicion arise because Dinesh Shafter was still alive when he was found at the public cemetery in Boralla. Sri Lanka Police is investigating this homicide on multiple leads and angles.
Detectives are investigating this homicide on multiple angles. Telephone records and CCTV footage are being obtained and analyzed. Detectives are also looking into the life of the businessman, complaints made against him to police and the CID, and other business-related matters surrounding the businessman. CID detectives and officers from the Boralla police have recorded statements from 23 people. Forensic personnel are also taking records of fingerprints to gather scientific evidence.
What is the link to Brian Thomas? Sri Lanka Police said a statement was recorded from former cricket commentator Brian Thomas regarding the murder of Dinesh Shafter. Detectives have also taken custody of the mobile device used by Brian Thomas for their investigations. Former cricket commentator Brian Thomas had told detectives that Dinesh Shafter had sent an SMS to his mobile phone requesting to meet. However, Brian Thomas had responded back by SMS saying there is no need for them to meet. Yet, on Friday, Colombo Additional Magistrate Harshana Kakanawala issued an order preventing former cricket commentator Brian Thomas from travelling overseas.
A complaint was filed with the CID with regard to a company that was operated by Brian Thomas and the late businessman. The detectives are looking into this as well, as the complaint relates to a sum of 1.43 billion rupees. Investigations are continuing to identify the criminals responsible for this.
Who is Dinesh Shafter? Shafter graduated with a bachelor's degree in law with proficient qualifications in finance as a member of the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants in the UK. Dinesh Shafter is a well-respected name in the Sri Lankan financial markets and was committed towards maintaining credibility in the market. Multiple financial companies that he led were operational in the primary and secondary markets in Sri Lanka. Among those is First Capital Treasuries PLC, a company where he was listed as a manager. managing director. Do you recall the infamous Treasury bond scam? Dinesh Shafter was a primary material witness at the Presidential Commission that investigated the bond scam. The Presidential Commission of Inquiry investigated bond issuances from the 1st of February 2015 to the 31st of March 2016, and the evidence provided by Dinesh Shafter led to startling revelations. The testimony provided by Dinesh Shafter to the Presidential Commission of Inquiry can be found on page 223 of the report of the Presidential Commission. In his evidence, Shafter said he had no knowledge of any unusual fund requirement for the government or of any price-sensitive information before the Treasury bond auction on the 27th of February 2015. He said the money requirement of the government that he was aware of is the amount that was advertised by the Central Bank of Sri Lanka before the said auction. According to his evidence, First Capital Treasuries PLC had also placed bids through its chief dealer Sohini Himalika Fernando at the auction held on the 27th of February 2015. Shafter said he became aware of two unusual events that occurred at this bond auction. One is that the amount of bids accepted at this particular auction was 10 times more than the amount offered. The other is that the yield rate had gone up over 300 basis points than what was prevailing in the market at the time. He said these events were unprecedented and were shocking to him, and therefore he had brought this to the notice of Dr. Harsha De Silva, who was the Deputy Minister at the time. It was done so by him via email, and the first email was sent on the 3rd of March 2015, while the second email was sent on the 6th of March 2015. Further evidence by Dinesh Shafter noted that his primary dealer company had no intention of bidding at the auction, however did so as it was a mandatory requirement for all primary dealers to place bids. He said that his company placed a dummy bid at the auction, hoping that the bid would be rejected by the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. However, as the central bank unexpectedly decided to accept bids with yield rates higher than the market rates at the time, the dummy bid by Dinesh Shafter's company was also accepted. He told the Commission that this decision cost his primary dealership a lot of money. The evidence presented by the late Dinesh Shafter was vital for the Presidential Commission of Inquiry into the Treasury bond scam to make its recommendations. When considering all these facts, the late Dinesh Shafter can be ruled as a powerful witness to the Presidential Commission of Inquiry that investigated the infamous Treasury bond scam.
Still no arrests have been made in relation to the recent attack carried on social media activist Dilan Senanayake with a sharp weapon. Senanayake suffered serious lacerations and is currently receiving treatment at the Kalubowila Teaching Hospital. Two masked men who had arrived in a three-wheeler at around 9 p.m. on Wednesday had attacked Senanayake.
What's the latest on cricketer Danushka Gunatilaka's legal battle in Australia?
In more local news, 75 people have been arrested in a special operation in schools in the Western Province over the sale of drugs and narcotic pills targeting school children.
Police seized 2 kilograms and 148 grams of the narcotic substance known as Mava during a special operation. 9 grams and 300 milligrams of heroin, 1 gram and 542 milligrams of the narcotic substance known as ice, and 10 narcotic pills were seized, while 75 suspects were arrested. Majority of children are prone to consume tobacco-related substances. These can be purchased from small shops on their way to schools. Toffee-like items are consumed when they are at class. When you open their mouths and check, you can see the red stains of this drug on their tongues. We have to eradicate drugs from the society. We are not going to preach. We are going to implement what needs to be done by the police.
Several parties expressed their opinions regarding drug trafficking and measures taken to combat it.
The children of this country are addicted to drugs. This is indeed a serious problem. But I have this request. The police officers who are checking the children's bags for drugs should also check their lunch boxes. They should report on what's inside these lunch boxes. This is a real problem. We no longer talk about the malnutrition problems these children are facing or their empty bags. lack of shoes, or the prices of the exercise books. Instead, we are talking about deploying police to schools and the drug problem. These are the big topics in discussion. These problems too need to be addressed. But what's the point in doing so if we are sweeping all the other issues under the carpet? Those who smuggle drugs are sitting in parliament. Those who bring drugs into the country have even been appointed as ministers. We are checking the bags of these school children. There is an airport and a port in the country. There are many places that they can use to smuggle these drugs into the country, especially by sea. They are aware of this, but instead of stopping this, they wait till the drugs are brought into the country and then distributed across the island to start investigations. How ridiculous is this? If a man who has lost any means of earning a livelihood steals a few things from a shop, he is considered a thief. After robbing the central bank, the man is also fit for the presidency. If one is found with just 1 milligram of drugs, he is remanded, but those who bring down drugs are elected to parliament. Then he becomes a minister. The man who consumes alcohol is labelled as an alcoholic, but the one who owns the distillery is in parliament. They own the liquor permits. We have voted for them. Now they are checking the bags of these students daily. I would like to ask if they check the bags of the parliamentarians and the people's representatives as well. I ask, while our student generation is facing state brutality in this manner, there is still no plan to investigate into those responsible for the Easter tax. The government is sleeping on it. The Easter tax was used for political gain, but there is no investigation into the people responsible for it. But now they are looking for drugs in students' bags. Such state suppression is being implemented in the country now. Drugs need to be wiped away from the country. Drug dealers should be given the highest form of punishment. They don't agree to those. I would like to request the government to look for those responsible for the Easter attack, the same way they are looking for drugs inside school bags. The mastermind is still hiding. Justice has not been served to the victims or their families.
The Kurunegala district conference of the Samagi Retired Government Employees Balavagia was held today under the chairmanship of opposition leader Sajid Premadasa.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe says that as an island nation, Sri Lanka should adopt a friendly policy with all countries when dealing with international community. The president made this statement while attending the 97th dispersal parade of the cadets of the Athalaba Military Academy this morning.
"351 cadet officers, including cadets from 4 foreign countries, were commissioned upon completing their training at the Athalaba Military Academy. President Ranil Wickremesinghe inspected the parade of cadets and presented the championship flag to the best cadet team and the swords to the cadets.
We are just a small island in the Indian Ocean. We haven't joined any groups of the superpowers. We have not entered into any agreement with world powers. The government has a responsibility to secure the friendship of other countries. Your responsibility is to protect the country and to face all challenges, whether internal or external.
We'll continue with more local stories after this short commercial break. Stay tuned.
News First, main sponsor.
25% for 2 months, 25.5% for 4 months. Valuable FD.
Ivan Satutin inne wiring karala. Wiring kirwe Eslon Polycon yodala.
For your safety and the protection of the wires used in networking and AC wiring, Eslon Polycon cable trunking.
25% for 2 months, 25.5% for 4 months. Valuable FD.
Welcome back to the news. The Department of Examinations says the Grade 5 scholarship examinations are set to take place tomorrow. The exam will be held across 2,894 examination centers and 494 coordination centers. 334,638 students will sit for this year's scholarship examinations.
The Grade 5 scholarship exams will be held after several changes.
The candidates will be sitting for the second paper first. That is the most important factor of this exam. Previously, we gave the candidates the first paper before anything else. This time, we will be giving them the second paper. It is the easiest paper. Candidates can provide answers based on the subjects they memorized.
This year, candidates will not be given an exam admission card, and they have been given several special instructions.
An examination admission card will not be given to the candidates. Signatures will be signed by the candidates. It takes 2 to 3 minutes for the invigilators to sign the examination admission cards of the candidates. In order to prevent this, we have introduced a register which needs to be signed before the exam instead of the examination admission card. Therefore, students sitting for the exam must remember to sign the register. This records your attendance for the exam. Moreover, the candidates will need to display their candidate number on the pockets of their uniforms. Pin the number to your uniform.
Special orders have been issued for the invigilators and teachers of this year's scholarship exam.
An examination center can have 3 examination halls. There will be 3 invigilators. These 3 invigilators will set their clocks for the same time period. These invigilators have to set up the time for their staff as well. This is a lesson we learnt from the previous scholarship exam.
The Commissioner General of Examinations advised students sitting for the exam to do so without exerting any undue pressure on themselves.
Will take over this country confidence and without holding any doubts. It doesn't matter if you get good grades or not.
International Monetary Fund Chief Kristalina Georgieva says Chinese officials have agreed to participate in a global sovereign debt roundtable that would include a wide variety of stakeholders, including private sector creditors.
According to a Reuters report, Georgieva told an event hosted by the IMF that she was feeling a bit more optimistic about the prospects for dealing with major debt issues facing low and middle income countries after high-level meetings with Chinese authorities last week. The IMF chief last week said she had fruitful exchange with her Chinese counterparts on the need to accelerate debt relief for countries like Zambia and Sri Lanka, adding that she saw space for a platform for more systematic engagement on debt issues where China can play an active role. Seeking a way out of its worst economic crisis in decades, Sri Lanka reached an IMF staff-level agreement in June. However, Reuters recently reported that the executive board of the IMF is not expected to formally approve Sri Lanka's $2.9 billion bailout before the year end. Sri Lanka's finance ministry, responding to the inquiry made by Reuters, said that they are taking every necessary step to secure financing assurances from Sri Lanka's bilateral creditors as quickly as possible. However, IMF officials for Sri Lanka said it is difficult to predict the timeline for the board approval as the process of debt discussions takes time. IMF chief Kristalina Georgieva said she had a very constructive engagement with Chinese leaders on the debt issue during her meetings.
Countless Sri Lankans continue to face grave hardships owing to the economic crisis. During these difficult times, Gammadda is working for the people to relieve some of their burdens. Gammadda distributed bags of essential items to the people of Polonnaruwa today.
Weighing down by the economic woes, many people toil hard in order to feed their families on a daily basis. Gammadda visited villages in the Alahara and Hinguragoda divisional secretariats in Polonnaruwa with the intention of providing assistance. Gammadda teams distributed bags consisting of essential items to the people. Gammeda's true strength lies with the people. Apart from development projects carried out at a village level, Gammeda strives to always be a source of strength and reliability for those who find it difficult to make ends meet on a daily basis. A people's initiative built in the heart of the village.
වැඩක් කාර්ය බහුල වැඩක් කෙනෙකුට කරන්න බැරි වැඩ කොටසක් එකට කරනවා මේ වැඩසටහන අපි සියලු දෙනා ලංකාවේ මුස්ලිම් සිංහල දෙමළ ඒකලා නොතක හැමෝටම උදව් කරනවා මේකට අපිත් අත් දෙක උස්සලා මේකට සම්පූර්ණ සහයෝගය දෙන්න ඕනේ
Gammeda, for the people, by the people.
The All Ceylon Bakery Owners Association says the price of 450 grams loaf of bread will be reduced by 10 rupees.
A decision has been made to reduce the price of a 450-gram loaf of bread by 10 rupees from midnight today. The president of the All Island Bakery Owners Association said the decision was reached taking into consideration the decrease in price of wheat flour.
Both the companies importing flour to our country have reduced their prices as per our request. We have decided to reduce the price of a loaf of bread by 10 rupees.
In the Hambantota district, people are suffering from the unintended consequences of irregular development. People in Hambantota struggled, urging the authorities to construct a wild elephant management reserve, but their cries fell on deaf ears. This is their situation today.
We were able to save our lives by running. Elephants have encroached onto our villages before. But back then, when we light a fire, they would leave. Even though we did the same this time, it did not work. The elephant kept chasing us around the house. He attacked the house and we were able to save our lives, but I can't afford to restore my damaged house. I borrowed 700,000 rupees to build this house as well. I'm still repaying that debt. I don't have money to rebuild this house. I make ends meet by doing manual labor. 2 of my children are attending school. How long do I have to wait to receive compensation? I don't have a place to stay until then.
This mother, who lives in the Koswagawa village in Suryavawa Hambantota, lost all her belongings in just one night. Wild elephants that frequently encroach this area destroyed the crops and houses of these people. The villagers are urging the authorities to provide a sustainable solution to this problem and protect their lives.
News First, with the people.
A group of people protested at the Liberty Roundabout today, demanding the release of activists including Vasantha Mudalige.
Several people gathered to protest at the Liberty Roundabout today. One of the protesters commented on the proposed electricity tariff hike.
420 million rupees is due from all of them in Parliament. Both ministers and members alike. The names have been mentioned. I mean, this is horrendous. This is unbelievable. If we do not pay our electricity bills within 1 month, the electricity cut. But these people have not paid electricity for the last so many years. So what is this nonsense? So whatever government that comes in, they're all the same. So where do we turn to?
Sri Lankan cricketer Dhanushka Gunathilaka, who was arrested and charged with sexual assault of a woman in Australia, has been allowed to move houses. Australian media reports Gunathilaka asked the court for permission to move into a one-bedroom apartment while he wrestles with his lengthy legal battle ahead.
The 31-year-old appeared in Sydney Downing Centre local court on Friday after being charged with 4 counts of sexual intercourse without consent. Gunathilaka has not entered pleas to the 4 charges of sexual assault. On Friday, the court heard he wanted to change his bail conditions to allow him to live alone in Sydney after residing with a supporter. The international cricket star was granted bail last month with strict restrictions which included a ban on using dating applications or his existing social media profiles. He had been behind bars on remand for 11 days before being granted his conditional liberty. The court heard the new address in Rhodes in Sydney's inner west has a vibrant Sri Lankan community which would lessen the risk of Gunathilaka fleeing the country. The court heard the cricket star's new home would still be a significant distance from the alleged victim's home in Sydney's eastern suburbs. The magistrate granted the bail variation and adjourned the matter until the 12th of January when Gunathilaka will return to court.
Shifting your attention to international news. Authorities in Peru have held high-level talks to try to resolve a deepening political crisis triggered by the ousting of the former president. The news comes following days of violent protests over the impeachment of former President Pedro Castillo on 7th of December.
The Council of State, the body made up of representatives of all branches of power and church leaders, had a 3-hour meeting in the capital, Lima. Earlier, 2 government ministers resigned following days of violent protest over the impeachment of Pedro Castillo on the 7th of December. More than 20 people have been killed. After the meeting on Friday evening, the head of the National Board of Justice, Jose Avila, called on Peruvians to avoid violence and engaged in peaceful dialogue with the authorities. He said government ministers would be travelling to the areas where people were protesting in order to promote such dialogue. The new president, Dina Boluarte, gave no statement to the press. Peru has been through years of political turmoil, with the latest crisis coming to a head when Castillo announced he was dissolving Congress and introduced a state of emergency. However, his plan backfired and Congress instead voted overwhelmingly to impeach him. Castillo, who is currently in detention, is being investigated on charges of rebellion and conspiracy. He denies all the accusations, insisting that he is still the country's legitimate president. Demonstrators are calling for the closure of Congress, the resignation of Boluarte, and early elections. On Friday, Congress voted against a proposal to bring elections forward to next year.
The congressional inquiry into last year's Capitol riot will reportedly recommend 3 criminal charges against former U.S. President Donald Trump.
According to U.S. media, the House of Representatives Select Committee will seek an unprecedented charge of insurrection against a former U.S. president. The panel is expected to publish its final report next week. Trump supporters stormed Congress on the 6th of January 2021 in a bid to stop Joe Biden's certification as president. The Justice Department, which is already investigating Trump's role in the unrest, is not obliged to consider referrals from any congressional panel. Trump denies wrongdoing. On Friday, his spokesperson said in a statement, quote, "The January 6th Unselect Committee held show trials by never Trump partisans who are a stain on this country's history," unquote.
In more international news, billionaire businessman Elon Musk says several journalists he suspended from his social media company Twitter will have their accounts reinstated. The ban was condemned by the EU and UN.
Reporters from the New York Times, CNN and Washington Post were among those locked out of their accounts. The UN tweeted that media freedom is not a toy, while the EU has threatened Twitter with sanctions. A Twitter spokesperson told a US tech news website the bans were related to the live sharing of location data. UN's Under-Secretary General for Global Communications, Melissa Fleming, said she was deeply disturbed by reports that journalists were being arbitrarily suspended from Twitter. She said, quote, "Media freedom is not a toy. A free press is the cornerstone of democratic societies and a key tool in the fight against harmful disinformation," unquote. On Friday, EU Commissioner Vera Jourova threatened Twitter with sanctions under Europe's new Digital Services Act, which she said requires the respect of media freedom and fundamental rights. Musk has not commented directly on the suspension, but said in a tweet that criticizing him all day long is totally fine, but doxing real-time location and endangering his family is not.
From that, we bring to a close this edition of Primetime News on TV1. For details of the stories and much more, simply log on to our website www.newsfirst.lk. For the News First, where the people come first, I'm Martin Satyanesan. You take care and good night.